You weren't supposed to marry him. You were meant for me. Blood poured through Mary's fingers as Huan Su whispered those words, dying on the floor after taking a bullet meant for her. His twin brother, her husband, stood 5 feet away, gun still smoking, watching the woman he'd just married 48 hours ago choose which brother to save. Huan Su's hand grabbed her wrist. Ghana, 6 years ago, you saved me. She froze. The bleeding stranger she'd hidden from corrupt police. The man she'd bandaged and sent away without learning his name. That was him. And her husband, the identical face staring at her from across the room, had just shot him for touching his wife. If you love stories about destiny, danger, and impossible choices, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories right now. We bring you addictive tales every single day, and your support keeps these stories coming. Mary Lattimore's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she stepped off the private jet onto Seoul's tarmac. 48 hours ago, she'd been running for her life through Cape Town streets, lungs burning, heart hammering, knowing the men chasing her would put a bullet in her head the moment they caught up. Now she wore a diamond ring she didn't ask for, carried a passport with a name that wasn't hers, and stood beside a man whose cold, penetrating calm terrified her more than the killers ever did. Jong Hwan-ki, Korean Mafia boss. Her husband, a man she'd met exactly twice before she became his wife. The Mercedes that picked them up from the airstrip was the kind of expensive that didn't need to announce itself. Black, sleek, silent, and Mary sat in the back, watching Seoul's glittering skyline blur past through tinted windows, feeling like she'd fallen into someone else's life. Someone braver. Someone who belonged in this world of private jets and armed security and men who could end lives with a phone call. She didn't belong here, but staying in Cape Town had meant dying, so here she was. You're safe now, Hwan-ki said quietly beside her, his voice steady, controlled. Everything about him was controlled. The way he sat, the way he breathed, the way his dark eyes assessed everything without revealing a single emotion. Safe. The word felt like a lie. Mary wanted to ask him why. Why her? Why marriage? Why bring a stranger into his world when a plane ticket and a fake identity would have been enough? But she'd learned in the past 2 days that Jong Hwan-ki didn't answer questions he didn't want to answer. He gave orders, made decisions, and expected obedience. And Mary, desperate, terrified, with nowhere else to go, had obeyed. The car pulled through massive iron gates into an estate that looked like something from a Korean drama. The building rose 40 stories into the sky, all glass and steel, modern and imposing, wealth radiating from every angle. Hwan-ki's hand found her lower back as they stepped into the elevator. Gentle, possessive, a touch that said mine without speaking a word. The elevator climbed silently. Mary's reflection stared back at her from the mirrored walls. A stranger in expensive clothes she didn't choose, with fear in her eyes she couldn't hide. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. Mary's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting. Everything was flawless, sterile, expensive, beautiful and cold, just like the man who'd brought her here. Welcome home, Hwan-ki said. Home, as if she'd had a choice. And Mary stepped inside, her heels clicking against marble, feeling like an intruder in a museum. Hwan-ki moved with easy confidence, shrugging off his jacket, his tailored navy suit fitting him like it had been sewn directly onto his body. He looked like power incarnate. Clean, elegant, unreadable, and Mary felt like prey pretending to be something else. She was about to speak, to ask where she'd be sleeping, what he expected from her, anything to break the suffocating silence, when the elevator chimed again. Her stomach dropped. The door slid open. A man stepped out. Same face, same height, same sharp jawline and intense eyes. But that's where the similarity ended. Where Hwan-ki was buttoned-up control, this man was raw chaos. His shirt hung open halfway down his chest, revealing bold, intricate tattoos that crawled across his skin like living art. Dragons, flames, Korean script she couldn't read. His hair was slightly longer, Messier. His aura crackling with volatile energy that made the air feel electric. His eyes locked onto Mary. And the world stopped. He froze mid-stride, his expression shifting from casual indifference to something Mary couldn't name. Shock, recognition, disbelief. The silence stretched too long. heavy, dangerous. Huan Qi's hand tightened on Mary's waist. Huan Su. The tattooed twin didn't acknowledge him. His gaze stayed fixed on Mary, his chest rising and falling with uneven breaths, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. Then he spoke, his voice rough, unsteady, barely above a whisper. She's the woman from my past. Mary's breath caught in her throat. What? The word came out strangled. Huan Qi stiffened beside her, tension radiating off him like heat. What are you talking about? Huan Su took a step forward, his eyes never leaving Mary's face. Where did you find her? She's my wife. Huan Qi's voice dropped to something dangerous. That's all you need to know. Your wife. Huan Su's laugh was sharp, disbelieving. You married her? Her. Mary's heart hammered. I don't understand. I've never met you. But even as she said it, something tugged at her memory. Those eyes. She'd seen them before. Ghana, Huan Su said, his voice cracking. 6 years ago. Makola Market. The memory slammed into her like a fist. A man bleeding in an alley. Corrupt police searching for him. Her ripping fabric from her dress to bandage his wounds. Hiding him behind market stalls until the officers passed. Pointing him toward the bus station. His terrified eyes. Her whispered words. Be safe. No, Mary breathed. You saved my life. Huan Su's voice shook. You risked everything for a stranger, and I've been searching for you ever since. Huan Qi's grip on her waist turned almost painful. You never told me. I didn't know. Huan Su's voice rose, anger bleeding through shock. How could I know you'd marry the one woman I've been looking for? The air crackled between them. These weren't just brothers. They were twins who'd moved through life as one unit, shared everything, never divided. Until now. She's my wife, Huan Qi repeated, each word deliberate, claiming. And she's the woman who saved my life. Huan Su stepped closer, his tattooed chest heaving. You should have told me before you married her. There wasn't time. That's not the real reason. Huan Su's eyes flashed. You knew. You knew what she meant to me, and you took her anyway. I protected her from people who wanted her dead. What did you do? The words hung like a blade. Mary stood frozen between them, watching the fracture happen in real time. The air turned sharp, electric, dangerous. These men had never clashed before. She could see it in their shock, their confusion, the way they looked at each other like strangers. And she was the reason why. You're safe here, Huan Qi said to her, his voice forced back to calm, but his body still rigid with tension. Across the room, Huan Su's voice dropped to something raw, broken. You don't understand. She saved my life. Mary's breath came in short gasps. She'd thought marrying Zhang Huan Qi meant escaping danger, finding safety, starting over. She'd been wrong. She hadn't escaped into safety. She'd walked straight into a war. If you can't stand people who force others into impossible situations without their consent, drop a comment telling us what time you're watching this. Let those traffickers and manipulators know we're not on their side. Subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories, and let's see what happens next. The silence in the penthouse was suffocating, and Mary stood frozen between the two brothers, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. Huan Qi's grip on her waist hadn't loosened. Huan Su hadn't moved from his spot near the elevator, his tattooed chest still heaving, his eyes still locked on her like she might disappear if he blinked. Enough! Huan Qi's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Huan Su, we'll discuss this later. Mary needs to rest. Don't dismiss me. Huan Su's voice was low, dangerous. You brought her into our home without telling me. You married her without. I saved her life. By trapping her? The words hit Mary like a slap. She pulled away from Huan Qi's touch, her legs shaky but holding. What does he mean, trapped? Huan Qi's jaw tightened. For the first time since she'd met him, his control cracked just slightly. You needed protection. I provided it. That's not an answer. Mary's voice rose, anger bleeding through fear. Why did you marry me? Why not just hide me? Give me a new identity? Why marriage? Huan Su crossed his arms, his expression hard. Because marriage is ironclad. It makes you untouchable. Huan Qi shot him a warning look, but Huan Su ignored it. The trafficking ring you witnessed in Cape Town. Huan Su continued, his voice rough. They're connected to the Choi cartel, Korean underworld, one of the most dangerous syndicates in Asia. The moment you saw their faces, you became a target. Imeri's stomach dropped. I don't understand. Why would they care about me? I'm nobody. You're a witness. Huan Qi's voice was steady again, controlled. You saw the Nigerian connection, the faces, the exchange, the documents. That makes you a liability they can't afford. So you married me to what? Make me part of your empire, so they can't touch me. Exactly. Huan Qi stepped closer, his dark eyes holding hers. As my wife, you're protected by the Zhang family. Attacking you means declaring war on us. The Choi cartel won't risk that. Imeri's hands trembled. You used me. I saved you. You didn't ask me. Her voice cracked. Marriage should be a choice, not a survival tactic. Would you have said no? Huan Qi's voice dropped, something almost vulnerable flickering in his eyes. If I'd given you a choice between marriage or death, what would you have chosen? Imeri opened her mouth, then closed it. Because he was right. She would have chosen life. She would have said yes. But that didn't make it fair. I'm sorry, Huan Qi said quietly. I'm sorry I didn't give you a choice. But I'm not sorry I kept you alive. The apology felt hollow. Sincere but unapologetic. He'd do it again if given the chance. Huan Su's voice cut through the moment. You should have told me before you married her. Huan Qi turned to face his twin, tension crackling between them. There wasn't time. There's always time. Huan Su's voice shook with barely controlled anger. We've made every major decision together since we were teenagers. We've never acted alone. Never. And you chose this, her, to be the first. She was dying, Huan Su. What was I supposed to do? Call you from Cape Town and debate while assassins closed in? You were supposed to trust me. Huan Su shouted, his control finally snapping. We're supposed to be a unit. You don't just marry someone without. She's not just someone. Huan Qi's voice went deadly quiet. She's my wife. And she's the woman I've been searching for. The words hung in the air like smoke. Heavy. Choking. Imeri watched them. These identical men who looked so alike, but felt so different. Huan Qi, all cold control and calculated decisions. Huan Su, all raw emotion and burning intensity. And both of them claiming her like she was a prize to be won. Stop, Imeri whispered. Both of you, just stop. They turned to her, and the weight of their attention made her breath catch. I don't belong to either of you, she said, her voice stronger now. I didn't choose this. I didn't choose any of this. Huan Su's expression softened. I know, and I'm sorry you're caught in this. But Imeri... He took a step closer, his voice dropping to something raw, vulnerable. Do you remember Ghana? She did. God help her, she did. 6 years ago, Makola Market, the afternoon sun beating down, turning the crowded stalls into an oven. Imeri had been buying fabric for her aunt when she'd heard the shouting. Find him! He went this way. Corrupt police officers, their uniforms stained with sweat and bribes, pushing through the crowd. And then she'd seen him, a young man, maybe 21 or 22, stumbling between stalls, blood soaking through his shirt, terror in his eyes. Their gazes met for half a second. Imeri should have looked away, should have minded her business. Instead, she grabbed his arm and pulled him behind her aunt's fabric stall. Don't move, she'd whispered. Don't breathe. The officers had passed within feet of them. Imeri's heart had hammered, so hard she thought they'd hear it. But they'd moved on, shouting obscenities, threatening vendors. When they were gone, Imeri had torn fabric from her new dress and bandaged the man's wounds. His hands had shaken. His eyes had been glassy with pain and fear. Why are you helping me? He'd asked in broken English. Because you're hurt, she'd said simply. And because those officers are corrupt. I can see it in their eyes. She'd pointed him toward the bus station, given him water, told him to be safe. He'd looked at her like she was an angel. "I'll find you again," he'd said. "Someday. I'll find you and thank you properly." Mary had smiled sadly. "Just stay alive. That's thanks enough." She'd never seen him again. Until now. "You remember," Hwan-Soo said, reading her expression. "You saved my life that day. I was on a mission that went wrong. Set up by someone inside our organization. Those officers were paid to kill me and make it look like an accident." "You were just a kid," Mary whispered. "I was 21, old enough to know I should have died that day." His voice cracked. "But you saved me, a stranger who had every reason to walk away, and you risked your life for mine." "I didn't know who you were." "That's why it mattered." Hwan-Soo's eyes glistened. "You didn't save me because I was powerful or useful. You saved me because it was right." Hwan-Ki's phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. His expression darkened as he read the screen. "What is it?" Hwan-Soo asked, his attention snapping to his twin. Hwan-Ki's voice was ice. "They know she's here." Mary's blood ran cold. "Who?" "The Choi cartel." Hwan-Ki turned the phone screen toward them. A message. Short. Brutal. "Return the girl. Or return your brother in pieces." The room tilted. Mary's legs went weak, and Hwan-Soo's hand shot out to steady her. "They found me," she breathed. "How did they find me?" "They have people everywhere." Hwan-Ki's voice was calm, but his eyes burned with something dangerous. It was only a matter of time. "So, what do we do?" Hwan-Soo's grip on Mary's arm tightened, protective. "We don't negotiate with threats." Hwan-Ki's jaw set. "Mary stays. We fortify. We prepare for war." "War?" Mary's voice pitched high. "You're talking about war because of me?" "We're talking about war because they threatened our family," Hwan-Ki corrected. "You're my wife. That makes you family. And we protect what's ours." Mary pulled away from both of them, her chest heaving, panic clawing at her throat. I should have never come here." The words came out broken, desperate. "I should have stayed in Cape Town. I should have run on my own. I should have. You'd be dead." Hwan-Ki's voice cut through her spiral. "Don't you understand? Without us, you'd already be dead. Maybe that would have been better than this." Mary shouted. "Better than being trapped between 2 brothers who can't decide if I'm a wife or a weapon." The silence that followed was deafening. Hwan-Soo's voice came out quiet, wrecked. "You're not a weapon, Mary. You're—" "I don't know what I am anymore," she whispered. Her phone, the new one Hwan-Ki had given her, buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. She pulled it out with shaking hands. One message. No words. Just a photo. Her father's electronics shop in Cape Town. Door smashed. Windows shattered. Blood on the concrete. And Mary's scream shattered the silence. If you believe families should be protected from cartels and trafficking rings, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories and comment, "Justice for Mary" below. Only people who think the innocent deserve to suffer won't engage. Don't let evil win. The photo of her father's destroyed shop burned into Mary's mind. Blood on concrete, shattered glass, a message written in spray paint across the wall. "We're coming." She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her father, was he alive? Her mother? Her younger sister? Hwan-Ki took the phone from her trembling hands, his expression darkening as he studied the image. "Get them out," he said to someone on his own phone, his voice clipped, commanding. "Now, I want the entire family on a plane to Singapore within the hour. Full security detail. No exceptions." "They're okay." Mary's voice came out strangled. "They will be." Hwan-Ki's hand found her shoulder, steady, grounding. "I have people in Cape Town. Your family will be protected. You should have protected them before." The words tore out of her. "Before they destroyed everything my father built. I didn't know they'd move that fast." For the first time, Hwan-Ki's control cracked, something like regret flickering across his face. "I'm sorry. Sorry didn't fix shattered windows. Sorry didn't erase the blood. But it kept her family breathing, and right now that was all that mattered. The next 3 days passed in a blur of restrictions and fear. Mary wasn't allowed to leave the penthouse. Armed guards stood outside every entrance. Her movements were monitored, her phone calls screened. She was a prisoner in a gilded cage, and the bars were closing in tighter every day. Juan Qi hired a full security team, 6 men who looked like they could kill with their bare hands, all positioned strategically throughout the building. He also assigned her a personal bodyguard, a stern-faced woman named Min Ji who followed Mary everywhere except the bathroom. "This is for your protection," Juan Qi had said, his voice gentle but firm. "Until we neutralize the threat, you stay inside. No arguments." Mary had wanted to scream, to fight, to run. But where would she go? The cartel had already proven they could reach her family halfway across the world. Running would only get more people killed. So she stayed, and she suffocated, until Huansu broke the rules. "Get up," he said one evening, appearing in her room without knocking. Minji had stepped away for a moment, and he'd seized the opportunity. Mary looked up from the bed where she'd been staring at the ceiling, numb. "What?" "Get up. You're learning how to fight." "Your brother said—" "I don't care what he said." Huansu's voice was rough, urgent. "You need to be able to protect yourself. If something happens, if we're not there, you need to know how to survive." Something in his intensity pulled her to her feet. He led her to a private gym on the lower level of the penthouse, a space she hadn't known existed, filled with equipment and mats and the sharp scent of sweat. "Show me your stance," Huansu said, moving to the center of the mat. Mary had no stance. She'd never thrown a punch in her life. But for the next hour, Huansu taught her how to block, how to strike, how to use an attacker's momentum against them. His hands were firm but careful on her arms, adjusting her posture, correcting her form. "Again," he said when she stumbled. "Harder." She threw the punch harder, and harder, until her knuckles ached and her lungs burned and something in her chest cracked open. She felt alive. Terrified, yes. Angry, absolutely. But alive in a way she hadn't felt since stepping off that plane. "Better," Huansu said, a hint of approval in his voice. His eyes held hers, intense, searching. "You're stronger than you think." The words settled in her chest like an ember. They met in secret after that. Whenever Minji took her scheduled breaks, whenever Juan Qi was occupied with business, Huansu taught her not just to fight, but to survive. And with every session, the air between them grew heavier, charged with something neither of them acknowledged. Juan Qi, meanwhile, tried a different approach. He brought her tea in the evenings, jasmine, perfectly steeped, served in delicate porcelain cups. He sat with her in the library, reading quietly while she pretended to focus on a book. His presence was warm, steady, patient. "You don't have to talk," he said one night, his voice soft. "I just want you to know you're not alone." His hand covered hers on the armrest of her chair. Gentle, careful, like she was something precious that might shatter. Mary didn't know what to do with that tenderness. With the way he looked at her, like she mattered beyond the protection deal, like she was more than a wife on paper. But then Huansu would appear, all raw intensity and unfiltered emotion, and everything inside her would shift. "You're letting him control you," Huansu said during one of their training sessions, his voice tight with frustration. "He's keeping me safe. He's keeping you locked up." Huansu grabbed her wrist, not rough, but firm, desperate. "I lost you once, Mary. In Ghana, I lost you, and I spent 6 years searching. I won't lose you again. Not to them. Not to him." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning she wasn't ready to unpack. The breaking point came 3 days later. Juan Qi found them in the gym. Mary was mid-strike, Huansu's hands on her waist, correcting her stance, his voice low in her ear. "What is this?" Juan Qi's voice cut through the room like ice. Huansu didn't let go of Mary, teaching her to protect herself. "Something you should have done instead of hiding her away." "I gave orders. No unauthorized training. No breaking protocol." "Your orders aren't law." Huansu stepped in front of Mary, protective, defiant. "She's not your prisoner. She's my wife. She's the woman I love." The words detonated like a bomb. Mary's breath caught. Juan Qi's expression went deadly still. Say that again, Huan Qi said, quietly, dangerously. You heard me. Huan Su's voice shook, but he didn't back down. You married her because it was strategic. I love her because I can't help it. There's a difference. Huan Qi moved so fast Mary barely saw it. One moment, he was across the room. The next, his fist connected with Huan Su's jaw. Huan Su stumbled back, then surged forward, tackling his twin. They crashed into the weight rack, metal clanging, furniture splintering. Identical faces twisted with identical rage. Stop! Mary screamed. Both of you, stop! They didn't hear her. Huan Qi pinned Huan Su against the wall, breathing hard. You don't get to decide what she means to me. You don't get to rewrite this because you have guilt over the past. And you don't get to cage her because you're afraid of losing control. Huan Su shoved him back. You married her in 2 days. 2 days! You didn't do it for her. You did it because you were terrified I'd find her first. The accusation landed like a blade. Huan Qi's face went pale. Get out. This is my home too. Get out. Huan Su's jaw clenched. He looked at Mary, something raw and wounded in his eyes, then turned and left. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mary, Huan Qi started. Don't. Her voice broke. Just don't. She fled to her room and locked the door. 2 days later, the attack came. Huan Qi insisted on taking Mary to a secure medical facility for a routine checkup. Just precautionary, he'd said, to ensure the stress hadn't affected her health. The building was in a quiet district, surrounded by Huan Qi's security team. They'd just stepped out of the car when the shot rang out. The world exploded into chaos. Glass shattered. Security shouted. Huan Qi shoved Mary behind the car, his body covering hers. Sniper! Someone yelled. Another shot. This one closer. Move! Huan Qi dragged her toward the building, but they didn't make it. 3 men appeared from an alley, knives drawn, faces covered. They moved with lethal precision, targeting Mary. Huan Qi engaged the first one, his movements brutal, efficient. But the second man got past him, blade raised, lunging for Mary. Huan Su came out of nowhere. He tackled the attacker, taking them both to the ground. The knife flashed. Huan Su grunted in pain, but didn't stop. He disarmed the man with savage efficiency, then turned to the third attacker. But not before the blade caught him again, this time in the ribs. No! Mary's scream tore through the chaos. Security descended, neutralizing the threat. Huan Su staggered, blood soaking through his shirt, his hand pressed to his side. I'm fine, he rasped. He collapsed. Mary caught him, barely keeping him upright, her hands immediately going to the wound. Blood, so much blood, slicked her fingers. Stay with me, she begged, her voice breaking. Huan Su, stay with me. His eyes found hers, hazy with pain. I told you, I won't lose you again. Then he passed out. The hospital room was too white, too sterile, too quiet. Huan Su lay unconscious, bandaged, hooked up to monitors that beeped steadily. The knife had missed vital organs by centimeters. He'd survive, but he'd almost died. For her. And Mary sat beside his bed, her hands still shaking, still stained with his blood despite washing them 3 times. Huan Qi stood by the window, silent, his shoulders rigid with tension. He saved my life, Mary whispered. I know. He almost died. I know. Huan Qi's voice cracked. I know. Mary looked at Huan Su's pale face, then at Huan Qi's distant silhouette, and something terrible crystallized in her mind. She wasn't afraid of the cartel, wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of this, of what she felt when Huan Qi touched her with careful tenderness, of what ignited in her chest when Huan Su looked at her like she was his entire world. She was afraid of destroying them both, because she was falling for them, both of them, differently but equally deeply. And love like that, divided, impossible, dangerous, would tear these brothers apart. She was their weakness, the fracture that would shatter everything they'd built. And God help her, she didn't know how to stop it. This story is just getting started, and we need you with us. If you're feeling even half of what Mary's going through right now, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories. Drop a comment and tell us, Team Huan Qi or Team Huan Su. We read every single one. Huan Su woke 3 days later. His eyes found Mary first, sitting in the chair beside his hospital bed, her head resting on her folded arms, exhausted. She'd barely left his side since the attack, refusing to go back to the penthouse even when Huan Qi insisted it was safer. Mary! Huan Su's voice came out rough, barely a whisper. She jolted awake, her eyes widening when she saw him conscious. You're awake. Oh God, you're awake. How long? 3 days. Her hand found his, gripping tight. You scared me. Worth it. A weak smile tugged at his lips. You're alive. Because you almost died. Like I said, worth it. Huan Qi appeared in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He froze when he saw his twin awake, relief flooding his features before he masked it with control. Welcome back, Huan Qi said quietly. Huan Su's eyes met his brother's. Something passed between them. Unspoken, heavy, complicated. We need to talk, Huan Qi said. When you're stronger. Now, Huan Su insisted, trying to sit up and wincing. You just woke up from. Now, Hyang. The brothers stared at each other. Then, Huan Qi nodded. They talked for 2 hours. Mary left to give them privacy, pacing the hospital corridor, her stomach in knots. She didn't know what they were saying, but she could hear their voices through the door. Low, intense, occasionally rising before dropping back to controlled tones. When the door finally opened, both men looked exhausted, but something had shifted. The razor-sharp tension that had defined them since Mary arrived had softened into something more bearable. We're going home, Huan Qi said. All of us. And we're fortifying. The penthouse transformed over the next week. Additional security systems were installed, motion sensors, reinforced doors, bulletproof glass on every window. Armed guards tripled. Escape routes were mapped, weapons strategically placed throughout the residence. And for the first time since Mary had arrived, the brothers worked together. She watched them move through the space with synchronized precision, finishing each other's sentences, anticipating each other's needs, operating as the unit they'd always been before she'd fractured them. But something was different now. Both men circled her, not competing exactly, but orbiting, present, attentive, protective in ways that made her breath catch. Huan Qi brought her breakfast every morning, sitting with her while she ate, his presence steady and warm. His hand would find hers across the table, his thumb brushing her knuckles in soft, deliberate strokes. You're safe, he'd say quietly. I promise you, Mary. You're safe here. And she'd almost believe him. Huan Su was different. He didn't offer gentle reassurances. Instead, he continued their training sessions, pushing her harder now, teaching her not just to defend, but to attack, to survive, to win. Again, he'd command when she hesitated. Harder. Like you mean it. And when she finally landed a solid hit, his rare smile would break through, pride shining in his eyes. There she is. There's the fighter. His hands would linger on her waist when he corrected her stance. His voice would drop lower when he spoke close to her ear. The air between them would thicken with something neither of them acknowledged, but both of them felt. Mary was drowning in them. In the way Huan Qi looked at her like she was precious. In the way Huan Su looked at her like she was everything. She knew it was dangerous. Knew she shouldn't feel this pull toward both of them. But she did. God help her, she did. The attack came on a Tuesday night. Mary had just finished showering, wrapped in a silk robe, her hair still damp. The penthouse was quiet except for the low hum of security monitors and the distant sound of the city below. Then the world exploded. The bomb detonated beneath the elevator shaft with a roar that shook the entire building. The floor buckled. Glass shattered. Alarms screamed through the chaos. Mary was thrown to the ground, her ears ringing, her vision blurred with dust and smoke. Mary! Huan Qi's voice cut through the chaos. He appeared through the smoke. Blood trickling from a cut on his forehead, his eyes wild. Are you hurt? I don't know. Gunfire erupted from somewhere below. Shouting, breaking glass. The sound of security engaging with intruders. They're inside, Huan Qi said, his voice deadly calm despite the chaos. He pulled Mary to her feet, shielding her body with his. Stay behind me. Don't leave my side. Huan Su burst into the room, gun in hand, his expression feral. Service and trance is breached. At least 8 hostiles, maybe more. Get her to the safe room, Huan Qi commanded. No. Huan Su's eyes blazed. We stay together. We fight together. There was no time to argue. The first gunman appeared in the doorway. Huan Qi moved with brutal efficiency, disarming him with 2 precise strikes. Huan Su fired, dropping another attacker before he could get shot off. But they kept coming. Too many. Too fast. And Mary pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering, everything Huan Su had taught her flooding her mind. Stay low. Watch for openings. Survive. Behind you, she screamed. Huan Qi spun, blocking a knife strike, his movements lethal and controlled. He fought like a machine, efficient, calculated, deadly. Huan Su fought like fire. His tattoos seemed to writhe in the dim emergency lighting as he moved through the chaos, every strike fueled by rage and desperation. Blood sprayed. Bodies dropped. He was terrifying, beautiful, absolutely lethal. Then one of the attackers broke through their defense. He grabbed Mary by the hair, yanking her backward. She screamed, fighting, using everything Huan Su had taught her. Elbow to the ribs, heel to the instep, twist and break free. But he was stronger. He dragged her toward the shattered balcony doors, toward the 40-story drop beyond. No! Huan Qi's roar shook the room. The attacker's arm locked around her throat. One more step, and she falls. Mary clawed at his arm, choking, her feet barely touching the ground. Let her go, Huan Qi said, his voice deadly quiet. His gun was raised, steady, aimed at the man's head. Drop your weapons. All of you, or I throw her over. Huan Su's eyes met Mary's across the chaos. She saw the calculation there, the decision forming. Don't, she tried to say, but no sound came out. Huan Su moved anyway. He launched himself forward, tackling the attacker with the full force of his body. The man's grip on Mary broke. She fell forward, gasping, scrambling away from the balcony edge. The gun fired. Once. Twice. Huan Su and the attacker crashed to the ground in a tangle of limbs. But only one of them moved after. Huan Su rolled off the body, clutching his side, blood blooming through his shirt. No, Mary whispered. No, no, no. More gunfire. Huan Qi advancing through the smoke, his expression carved from stone. He moved with single-minded purpose until he stood over a man in expensive clothes, older, scarred, clearly the one giving orders. The cartel leader. You made a mistake coming here, Huan Qi said quietly. You can't kill me. You'll start a war. Huan Qi pressed the gun to the man's forehead. The war started when you threatened my wife. He pulled the trigger. The sound echoed through the penthouse. Final. Absolute. The remaining attackers fled or surrendered. Security swarmed in. The room fell into eerie silence except for the wail of distant sirens. And Mary's screams. She crawled to Huan Su, her hand shaking, pressing against the bullet wound in his side. Blood. So much blood poured through her fingers. Stay with me, she begged, her voice breaking. Huan Su, please. Stay with me. His eyes fluttered open, glassy with pain. Did we win? You won. You won, okay? Just stay awake. Please stay awake. Tired, he murmured. I know you're tired, but you have to stay with me. Tears streamed down her face. You saved me twice. You don't get to leave me now. Huan Qi dropped to his knees beside them, his hands joining hers, applying pressure to the wound. His face was pale, his control completely shattered. Don't you dare, Huan Qi said, his voice raw. Don't you dare die on me, Huan Su. Not for her. Not for anyone. Huan Su's lips curved into the faintest smile. She's worth it. Ambulance is 2 minutes out, someone shouted. 2 minutes. And Mary pressed harder against the wound, her whole body shaking. Stay with me. Please. I can't lose you. Huan Su's hand found hers, blood-slicked and weak. Not going anywhere. But his eyes were closing. No. Mary screamed. Stay awake. Look at me. Huan Su, look at me. His eyes opened one more time. Found hers. Held. Love you, he whispered. Then his hand went limp in hers. The ambulance ride was a blur of flashing lights and desperate prayers. Mary held Huan Su's limp hand the entire way, her other hand pressed against his wound. Blood soaking through the bandages the paramedics had applied. His face was pale, too pale, his breathing shallow. Don't leave me, she whispered over and over. Please don't leave me. Huan Qi sat across from them, silent, his jaw clenched so tight she thought it might crack. His hands were covered in his twin's blood. His eyes never left Huan Su's face. The hospital was chaos. Doctors rushed Huan Su into surgery immediately. Mary tried to follow, but a nurse gently but firmly held her back. You have to wait here. We'll update you as soon as we can. The waiting room became Mary's prison. She sat in a plastic chair, Huan Su's blood still on her hands, still on her clothes, still everywhere. Huan Qi paced like a caged animal, his control completely shattered, running his hands through his hair, his breath coming in sharp bursts. He'll be okay, Mary said, her voice hollow. He has to be okay. Huan Qi didn't respond. He just kept pacing. Hours crawled by. 3, 4, 5. Finally, a surgeon emerged, exhausted but calm. The surgery was successful. The bullet missed vital organs, but he lost a lot of blood. He's stable now, but the next 24 hours are critical. Mary's legs nearly gave out. Huan Qi caught her, his arm around her waist, holding her up. Can we see him? Huan Qi asked. Soon. He's in recovery. We'll let you know when he's moved to a room. When they finally allowed visitors, Mary went in first. Huan Su lay motionless in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors and IVs, his tattooed chest wrapped in bandages. But he was breathing, alive. Mary sank into the chair beside his bed and took his hand. I'm here, she whispered. I'm not going anywhere. She didn't leave, not when nurses came to check vitals, not when Huan Qi brought her food she couldn't eat, not when exhaustion pulled at her bones. She stayed. Huan Qi stood by the window, watching her watch his brother, something complicated and painful crossing his face. Jealousy, guilt, grief, all of it tangled together. You should rest, he said quietly. I can't. Mary. I said I can't. Her voice broke. He took a bullet for me, Huan Qi. The second time he almost died because of me. I'm not leaving him. Huan Qi's jaw tightened. He nodded once, then left the room without another word. Huan Su woke late that night. His eyes fluttered, opened slowly, unfocused, then found Mary sitting beside him. A weak smile tugged at his lips. You stayed. Of course I stayed. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You scared me. Again. Sorry. His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. Bad habit. Stop taking bullets for me. Can't promise that. His hand tightened around hers, and something shifted in his expression. Pain mixing with longing, with something raw and vulnerable that made Mary's breath catch. Mary, he said quietly. Can I tell you something? Anything. You weren't supposed to marry him. The words came out broken, desperate. You were meant for me. From the moment you saved me in Ghana, I knew. I spent 6 years searching for you. 6 years dreaming about finding you again, thanking you, getting to know you. His voice cracked. And when I finally found you, you were already his. Mary's chest tightened, tears streaming freely now. Huan Su, I know it's not fair. I know you didn't choose any of this, but I can't stop feeling like fate brought you back to me, only to take you away again. Outside the door, Huan Qi stood frozen. He'd been coming back to check on them, to bring water, to do something useful. But Huan Su's words stopped him cold. You were meant for me. The words hit like a physical blow. Huan Qi's hand pressed against the wall, his breathing shallow, his heart fracturing in ways he didn't know were possible. He'd married Mary to protect her. But somewhere between the courthouse and the penthouse, between the threats and the attacks, between watching her sleep and bringing her tea, something had changed. He'd fallen for her, quietly, completely, irreversibly. And his brother loved her too. The brother who'd saved her life twice. The brother she refused to leave. the brother who'd been searching for her long before Huan Qi had even known she existed. Huan Qi walked away before they could see him, his shoulders heavy, his control slipping, his heart breaking in silence. Inside the room, Imeri wiped her tears. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Huan Su's thumb brushed across her knuckles. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens next, I needed you to know. The door opened. Huan Qi stepped back inside, his face carefully neutral, his walls rebuilt. But Imeri saw the crack in his armor, the pain he was trying to hide. How are you feeling? Huan Qi asked his twin, his voice controlled. Like I got shot. Huan Su's attempt at humor fell flat. Huan Qi nodded. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, Mary stood. I need some air. I'll be right back. She stepped into the hallway, her mind spinning. She'd been brought into this world as a witness to a crime she never should have seen, saved as leverage in a war she didn't understand, married for protection she didn't ask for. But somewhere along the line, she'd become something else entirely. A woman loved by both twins, a fracture in their unbreakable bond, a link to their past, a catalyst for their future. And she didn't know how to fix it, didn't know if it could be fixed. When she returned to the room, both brothers were there. Huan Qi, standing by the window. Huan Su sitting up in bed, wincing but alert. They both turned to look at her, and the weight of their attention made her breath catch. We need to talk, Huan Qi said quietly. All of us. Imeri's heart hammered. About what? About this. Huan Qi gestured between the three of them. About what happens now. Huan Su's voice was rough but steady. She deserves to choose, not be trapped by circumstance or duty or protection deals. She's my wife, Huan Qi said, his voice barely controlled. And she's my destiny, Huan Su countered. The woman I've been searching for. The woman who saved me when no one else would. They stared at each other, these identical men who'd moved through life as one, now divided by the woman standing between them. And Mary's voice came out trembling, barely a whisper. What if? She swallowed hard. What if I never belonged to just one of you? The question hung in the air like smoke. Heavy. Impossible. Dangerous. Neither brother spoke. Neither moved. Because they both knew whatever Mary had just asked, whatever door she just opened, nothing would ever be the same again. The war outside had ended. The cartel was broken. The threats neutralized. But the war inside the Zhang family, the one fought with love and loyalty and impossible choices, was just beginning. And Mary stood at the center of it all, her heart divided, her future uncertain, her questions still unanswered. We've reached the end, but this story is far from over. Subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories if you need to know what happens next. Comment and tell us. Can love work when it's divided between two? We'll see you in the next one.